I got to start today's prophecy update this way. Something happened last week on Wednesday. And for those of you who are students of Bible prophecy, I'm certain it did not escape your notice. But not only was it historic, it was profoundly prophetic. And what I'm speaking of is the meeting in Sochi, Russia, that Putin had with Erdogan of Turkey and Rouhani of Iran. Now listen, I went through my notes this morning and I had to redo a lot of them because what happened last week has never happened before in history. And I don't know if it's possible to, and I know that saying this way has the potential of coming off sensational, and I don't want to do that. I think those of you who know me well enough know that I'm not like that. I mean, if something happens and it has prophetic significance, I'm going to tell you that. But if something happens that has unprecedented prophetic significance, I'm going to tell you that too. And that's what's happened. This has never happened before. Let me see if I can put this in perspective, and you'll bear with me. Right? So, didn't hear any amens on that one, but we'll just assume that you'll bear with me. In 1978, let's just say that, just to put it into perspective, that we're having a prophecy update in 1978. You know what's happening in 1978 at that time? Iran is one of Israel's greatest allies. Iran! This is pre-1979, when it became the Islamic Republic of Iran under the Ayatollah. That was 1978. Let's say we're still in 1978 and we're doing a prophecy update. How about Turkey? Turkey was the place where the Israeli would go to vacation. Turkey! An ally of Israel, a friend to Israel. 1978. Here we are today, 2017. Russia, Iran, and Turkey. I'll call them the big three. And I'll call them the big three because they're the main three that will be at the helm of this alliance, chiefly with Russia and Iran, that is prophesied about in Ezechiel chapter 38, some 2,500 plus years ago. I want to put a slide up, especially for the benefit of those for whom Ezekiel 38 is unfamiliar. It's probably one of the most important prophecies in all of the Bible. And it foretells this allied attack against Israel. And I just want to take you through it quickly. And I want to read, beginning in verse 1, I'll read through to verse 8. And then I want to read verse 13. Let me preface it this way again, at the risk of sounding sensational. As I read this, we are reading today's news. What I'm about to read and explain is happening now. Now. It has never happened before. It is happening now. Listen, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog. Who's that? Oh, the modern day area known today as Russia. The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, prophesy against him, this is the leader, and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Listen, verse 5. Persia, Iran. In the last century, they were called Persia. This name change to the modern day name of Iran was just in the last century. Up until that point, they were always known as Persia. And by the way, in Iran, they're not Arabs, they're Persians. And they don't speak Arabic, they speak Farsi. These are Persians. Then Cush. Cush is the northern area known today of Ethiopia and Sudan. And then the next nation by its ancient name is Put. And this is modern day Libya, and also including parts of North Africa. Will be with them, with who? With Iran and Russia, with shields and helmets. Verse 6, here's another nation. Gomer, with all its troops, and interesting, Beth Togarma. Beth or Beth in Hebrew is the same word in Arabic. It's house, the house of Togarma. We would call the Saudi Ibn Beit Saud, the house of Saud. So this is the house of Togarma, or known today, Gomer and Beit Togarma, as Turkey. That's Turkey. Gomer. And by the way, we know that because of the ancient records, but it says in Ezekiel, from the far north with all its troops and the many nations with you. So if you get a map like I have here and you go all the way to the north, that is Turkey. Get ready, verse 7, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate, almost 2,000 years. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety, better translated in security and prosperity, which explains what we're about to read in verse 13. Listen. Sheba and Dedan. Who's that? Oh, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia. Oh, they're aligned with Russia and Iran and Turkey? No. Listen to this. And the merchants of Tarshish and all her villages, or as some of your translations render it, the young lions thereof. These are the young countries, which is why some believe this is a reference to the UK, of which the national symbol is a lion, and the young nations from the UK, the US. So if that's the case, then what do Saudi Arabia and the UK and the US do? Oh, they just protest. They question the attack. Listen to what they ask. Have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hordes to loot? To carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? Or, as another translation renders it, to take a spoil? This presupposes that there's a spoil to take in Israel. Oh, is there? You know there is. You remember, it wasn't that long ago that they found natural gas and oil that makes the oil and natural gas in Saudi Arabia and even Russia look like child's play. Oh, you're exaggerating. Not really. There is so much oil and natural gas that Israel has now, not to mention the technology, the prosperity. Israel is dwelling securely and is prospering like no other nation on earth today. And the spoil is there for the taking. And make no mistake about it, this is exactly what is happening, and this is exactly what this is about. What we witnessed this last week with Russia, Iran, and Turkey is now, I believe, the aligning of every nation to a nation exactly as was recorded in this prophecy in Ezekiel. I want to very quickly have you consider the following breaking news reports out of Israel. And I want you to, as I quote from them, know that they were just from the last few days, just the last few days. Let's start with this Ynet news report on Wednesday. They refer to this meeting as Putin's victory summit, this meeting with Erdogan and Rouhani. Putin, in discussing what he calls Syria's post-war prospects, was quoted as saying, "We've reached a new phase." Now, of course, he's declaring victory over the Islamic State, which I think the jury is still out. There does seem to be a vacuum now that is created, certainly in Syria as well as Iraq. But here's what's interesting. The Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, paid a visit to the Sochi resort there in Russia where the leaders were meeting. And according to Ynet, Putin told Rouhani and Erdogan that, quote, Syria's collapse was prevented thanks to the country's trilateral efforts. Syria's collapse? Yeah. I'll continue. President Rouhani replied that the time was right for a political settlement of the conflict and that he was pleased that Russia, Turkey, and Iran were collaborating so closely on the issue of, get this, Syrian peace. Syrian peace? But nevertheless emphasized that foreign intervention in Syria must cease. Wait, foreign, who's he talking about? Oh, you know who he's talking about. The United States of America. The great Satan, remember? Any foreign military presence in the country is only legitimate if it enters at the behest of the Syrian government. Well, that's not going to happen. The Kremlin added, Putin also intends to speak with other leaders about the Syrian conflict. These have already included, listen, just this last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom he spoke on Tuesday for half an hour, U.S. President Donald Trump, with whom he spoke for an hour on Tuesday, and, Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. You know who that is? That's the father of bin Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, who we talked about at length last week. Soon, many believe, to be crowned king in Saudi Arabia. Several interesting details stand out here, and I want to take just a moment and point them out before we go any further. First, notice, I don't know if you caught this or not, but Russia is now, the prominence of Russia in Syria and in the Middle East, the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, is contrasted with America's absence. It wasn't that long ago that nobody did anything in the Middle East unless America signed off on it first. Not anymore. Thanks to the previous administration, dare I say, the United States of America has become inconsequential in the Middle East, and one Barack Hussein Obama basically signed over the title deed of the Middle East, specifically in Syria, to Russia. Russia. Please don't be ignorant. I'm not saying you are. That's what the Apostle Paul said in many of his epistles. Don't be ignorant. Please. Another detail I want you to notice. There's this conspicuous alignment of sorts between, who knew, Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and Israel? Yeah. Wait, isn't that exactly what we just read in verse 13 of Ezekiel 38? Keep in mind, Saudi Arabia are Sunni Muslims, and in Iran they are Shiite Muslims. And please know that in Saudi Arabia you have Mecca and Medina, and that's a problem for Iran. And so now you have Saudi Arabia at odds with Iran for that reason, and with Russia for another reason. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. One more detail. The only reason Syria is not a ruinous heap yet, according to Isaiah 17, is because Russia, Iran, and I'll add Turkey, still need Syria as a means to an end. What is that end? And why are they in Syria? Oh, they're in Syria because they want to attack Israel from the north, exactly as Ezekiel 38 says. And to me, the question isn't so much that of why they're in Syria. I mean, that they're in Syria. They are in Syria. The question is why. And here's why. Iran, via Russia, has military installations in Syria within about 30 to 35 miles of Israeli territory in the Golan. For those of you who go to Israel with us, we go to the Golan, you can actually see Damascus. Sometimes you can hear it if there's warfare going on from the Golan. I remember one time our tour guide told us, and he wasn't exaggerating, he said, we know what newspaper Bashar al-Assad is reading in Damascus from Israel. They know everything that's going on. It's that close. It's that close. Okay, so Iran is there now establishing these military installations. Why? And what's in it for Iran? And what's in it for Russia? Well, I believe that Russia and Iran are keeping Syria propped up for different reasons. For Russia, it's economic, and for Iran, it's prophetic. Let me start with Iran and this breaking Israel news report in which they ask this question. Is Iran trying to bring Islamic end of days in Syria? Answer is yes, by the way, spoiler alert, but let me just quote the article. Iran is establishing bases in Syria, but according to some sources, their preparations to engage Israel are motivated far more by messianic aspirations than military or political ones. The escalation of Iranian military efforts in Syria are religiously motivated, Ryan Mauro, a political analyst for the Clarion Project, explained. To the Iranian regime, this is the fulfillment of prophecy, not Bible prophecy, Islamic prophecy. Islam's tradition holds that Mahdi is the redeemer of Islam. Listen to this. The arrival of Mahdi, this is the Muslim Messiah, if I can say it that way, they believe will coincide with the arrival of the Christian Messiah, who will be the Mahdi's assistant in fighting the Masih ad-Dajjal. That's Arabic for the Antichrist or the false Messiah. So Jesus is, according to Islamic eschatology or prophecy, Jesus is going to come to assist this Mahdi to bring about the fulfillment of Islamic prophecy. Are you still with me here on this? It gets worse, so I just want to make sure you're okay before I read on. The Mahdi will reappear along with Jesus, who will declare himself a Muslim. Okay, all right. And, listen to this, and kill Christians who refuse to convert. Shia Islam holds that the end of days will be a bloody battle, and this is interesting, killing off 2/3 of the world population. That's in Revelation, by the way. And leaving the rest to convert to Islam. In a speech in front of the UN General Assembly in 2008, in fact, I remember the prophecy update that year, former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad left the gathered politicians aghast as he explicitly begged Allah to hasten the return of the Mahdi. Iran believes they will lead the battle against Sunni adversaries, continue down into Israel, and eventually take over Jerusalem. Oh, that explains a lot, doesn't it? He believes that the recent destabilization in Saudi Arabia is a direct result of Iran's apocalyptic agenda. I'm telling you, please, please, please. If this is not Ezekiel 38, I don't know what is. I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to scream and yell. You know I can. I'm telling you, if this is not Ezekiel 38, I don't know what is. That's why Iran is there. That's why Iran needs Syria there. How about Russia? Let's talk about Russia in this Russia Times article from Friday with the headline, Putin crowned world's energy czar, with Saudis bowing to reality. Let me quote quickly the Times. Russian President Vladimir Putin has become the most influential player in the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as OPEC. The Russian leader is currently calling all the shots. One senior OPEC official told Bloomberg on condition of anonymity. Russia, which is not even a member of the group, has reportedly stolen Saudi power, which for many years was overwhelming when Riyadh could move crude prices with just a few words. Putin is now the world's energy czar, said Halima Croft, an analyst who directs global commodity strategy at New York-based RBC Capital Markets, as quoted by the media. The energy czar? Oh, wait a minute. So, is that what Ezekiel is talking about the spoil? One has suggested all you have to do is take the SP off of spoil and you have oil. That's what Russia wants. That's why Russia is in Syria. And that's why Russia and Iran, together with Turkey et al., are all at the ready to attack Israel. For Iran, it's the fulfillment of Islamic prophecy, as satanic as it is, by the way, and blasphemous as it is. And for Russia, it's all about the money. It's all about the spoil. It's all about the oil and the natural gas. Well, I believe that it's just a matter of time before the Russian-Iranian-led alliance of nations makes their fatal move. And I say fatal, not for Israel, but for them. You want to know why? Ezekiel 38 goes on to declare that God's hot anger will be aroused, so much so that God will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on them, that they will know that He is God. That's how it ends for them. Not for Israel. Not for Israel. It has to do with what the Bible calls an everlasting covenant. You know what everlasting means? I'm going to quit hitting the mic now, but it means it lasts forever. He has a covenant with Israel. Let me see if I can bring this to a close. It's happening very fast. I have to confess that this has got me a little bit taken back by just how fast all of this is coming to pass. I was thinking about this yesterday, I think it was, that it's like being in a car driving very fast in order to arrive at your final destination, and the closer you get, the more frequent the signs are. And that's how I see what's happening today. The closer we get, the more frequent and welcoming, I might add, those signs become. I think about what Jesus said, it's recorded in Matthew. Talk about the harsh words in our study in Galatians. The harshest words from the Savior's mouth were for the legalists and the hypocrites and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and such is the case here in Matthew 16, verses 1 through 3. The Pharisees and the Sadducees came and they wanted to test Jesus, and they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. This was Jesus' answer. When it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. Wow. You know, my hope, with any and every prophecy update that we have, it's always my hope that it in some way is a help to you. But particularly for today, I hope that in some way today's update has been some help in better interpreting the signs of the times. The signs for Ezekiel 38 are there. And they're coming more frequently as we get closer. And here's the bottom line. It's what Jesus said in Luke 21:28. And the key word in what he said is beginning. He says this, when you see these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh. We're seeing Ezekiel 38 begin to come to pass. And Jesus said, when you see that sign, interpret those signs that are beginning to come to pass, and look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh.